Our theme this weekend is developing concentration, which in Buddhism, when we talk about the three higher trainings of ethical conduct, concentration, and wisdom, it comes there. And when we also talk of the six paramitas, the six perfections or six far-reaching practices, it's also included there as the perfection of meditative stability. So there's different kinds of meditation. One kind is stabilizing meditation, the other kind is analytic. And so this is the stabilizing kind of meditation. So stabilizing meditation is done in order to calm the mind and make it single-pointed. So and analytical meditation is done in order to develop understanding. So we analyze, we think about, we probe different topics. Eventually we want to combine them together, so that within the stillness of stabilizing meditation, we can still probe and investigate the ultimate nature of reality. But in particular, we're going to be concentrating on the stabilizing aspect of meditation this weekend. We will be doing some of the analytic meditations, because when we're developing concentration or stabilizing meditation, we have to eliminate different hindrances and impediments and faults. And so doing the analytic meditations helps us to develop the antidotes to those different impediments and faults. So, for example, we'll be going through, this weekend, what's called the 5 hindrances. So one of them is sensual desire. So as a remedy to that, if we meditate on impermanence, do the analytical meditation on impermanence, or if we do the analytical meditation on the faults of cyclic existence, that helps calm the attachment to sensual objects. Another hindrance is ill will or malice. Here, if we do the meditation on loving kindness, which involves thinking about the kindness of others and so on and so forth, it involves thought, then that will help us overcome our antipathy towards others, and so on. Okay? Then what I want to describe in this session is the basic meditation we'll be doing this weekend in all the meditation sessions to one extent or another, some extent you'll be doing this. And also to talk about the walking meditation, and then start on the text that I've chosen to use for this retreat or course, whatever you want to call it. So the basic meditation that we'll use for developing concentration, you can choose either between the breath or a visualized image of the Buddha. Yeah, actually there's many, many possible objects to use for developing concentration, but if I described all of those, it would take most of the weekend. So let's just stick to these 2 basic fundamental ones that, are often chosen. So with the breathing meditation, you breathe normally and naturally without forcing your breath in any way. Put your attention on the upper lip and the nostrils. Keep your attention there and feel the sensation of the breath as it goes in and out. So you'll feel the breath, on your upper lip, in your nostrils, okay? Or alternatively, if you want to focus on your belly, your abdomen, keep your attention there and watch the rise and fall of the abdomen. Yeah. So your body, your belly extends when you breathe in. It, collapses when you breathe out. So to do the breathing meditation correctly, you have to breathe correctly, with which many of us don't. Okay, myself included. So breathing correctly means that we breathe from our diaphragm, so that our belly actually extends when we inhale. Most of us, and especially if we're anxious or rushed, we breathe from the top of our chest. So it's a good exercise. Put one hand here and one hand on your belly, okay? And then, deliberately take breaths whereby your belly is going to extend, Now take a short breath that's from the top of your chest. Can you feel the difference between them? Yeah. Most of us, it's interesting to tap into yourself from time to time and see exactly where you're breathing from. Because our breathing patterns change according to our emotional states, and especially, like I said, when we're anxious, when we're rushed, we breathe from up here, and kind of our chest this part of our chest moves, but nothing else. Yeah, and it's very short breaths. Whereas, when we're more relaxed, we tend to naturally slow, our breath naturally slows down, and we tend to focus more here. Some of us are so used to in the habit of breathing from here that we've forgotten how to breathe from our belly. Yeah, so it's good to really, maintain some mindfulness of that, and to make sure that the air gets in. Because when you take breaths from your belly, when your diaphragm moves, the air gets in your body. Yeah, when you breathe from up here, it's there's not much space, and the oxygen can't get in. So this is not deep breathing. So if you're using the breath as the object of meditation, you're not deep breathing. Okay? And I say this because sometimes we get people, that the meditation hall is completely silent, and somebody decides they're going to do deep breathing, and you hear throughout the whole meditation hall. No, that's not what we're doing when we're breathing from our belly. Okay, so you keep the flow of your breath natural. You don't force it like you do when you're deep breathing, but you are aware that you're breathing from here, so that the air is actually entering your body. Okay? And so if you focus here, you're focusing on the sensation of the breath as it goes in and out. If you're focusing here, you're focusing on the rise and fall of your belly. Okay? So the instructions are actually quite simple. We get distracted a lot, and so we will be talking about these various distractions throughout the weekend. When you get distracted, and this applies to when we're meditating on the Buddha as well, just notice your distraction. Don't get mad at yourself. Okay? Repeat. Don't get mad at yourself. Just notice that you've gotten distracted and bring your attention back to the breath. There's no need for any other internal commentary, such as, oh, again, I'm distracted. My mind is totally crazy. Everybody else is in samadhi, and I'm the only one who can't focus. And on and on and on and on, all this negative self-chatter. So there's absolutely no reason for that. That is simply another distraction. So if there's a distraction, You notice it, you bring yourself back to your object of meditation. In this case, the breath. Or if you're doing the meditation on the Buddha, which I'll describe in a moment, then you'll bring it back to the visualized object of the Buddha. Okay? So this involves some mental training already, especially if you have a habit of self-judgment and criticism. Okay? So you have to be very vigilant and just, okay, there was a distraction, bring my attention back. Okay? It's kind of like if you have a 3-year-old, okay, and your 3-year-old runs off and you pick him up and gently bring him back, and then the child runs off again and you pick them up and gently bring them back. Okay? Yeah. So it's just the mind runs off, you pick it up, bring it back. Yeah. Okay? And it's interesting here to observe the pattern of what you get distracted about. Okay? Because this will tell you a lot about yourself, different emotional patterns, habit patterns we have that we need to work on. Yeah. And so they usually fall within the 5 hindrances, which we'll discuss. But just notice, what you're getting distracted by. Yeah. Is it a thought of attachment? You're wanting something. A thought of aversion? You're upset about something. Is it doubt? Is it sleepiness, drowsiness? Yeah. Is it anxiety? And worry and restlessness? What is it? And so observe like the emotional states that distract you, and observe which objects within those emotional states are taking you away. So let's say if you're having a lot of thoughts of attachment, is it attachment for food? Is it attachment for sex? Is it attachment for love and approval? Is it attachment for your bicycle? Or doing triathlons? What is the attachment of? So notice also the object. Okay? So like I said, it gives us a lot of information about what is usually going on in our mind. Yeah. We often, our mind is busy, but we're often not even aware of what we're thinking about. You know how you can drive from point A to point B, yeah, and when you get out of the car at point B, if somebody said, "What did you think about the whole time?" Yeah, and let's say you're driving alone and you don't have the radio on. Now I know that's near impossible, but let's just imagine. Or even you have the radio on. Are you always paying attention to the radio? But you arrive at point B and somebody said, "What did you think about during that last half an hour?" Could you tell them? Yeah. Do you know what you were thinking about when you walked from wherever you were to the meditation hall? Do you remember what was going on in your mind then? Few of you do, few of you don't. Yeah. So it's interesting, just even short distances, are we aware of what's going on in our mind? And even if we're aware, what in the world is going on in our mind? Is it, I better hurry up, otherwise they're going to look at me funny? Yeah. Or is it, why did they ring the bell now when I'm not ready to come? Or, like what is usually going on in our mind? When you're walking to the meditation hall, do you think, oh, I'm so fortunate to go to listen to Dharma teachings? Was that your thought when you were walking here? Yeah? Or were you worried if you left the stove on at home? That one? Okay. So quite interesting to, observe in that way. Okay, so that's using the breath. Another object to use is the visualized image of the Buddha. And this object has certain advantages over the breath in the sense that the breath is simply a neutral object, whereas when you imagine the Buddha in your mind's eye, you're imagining an enlightened one. And like I was saying yesterday in the teachings, when we look at the statue of the Buddha or we imagine the Buddha, it has an incredibly powerful effect on our own mind. Yeah. So when you imagine the Buddha, you look at his eyes, his peaceful demeanor, you think of his qualities, and so that affects the mind in quite a good way. Transforming the mind into virtue. It increases our refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. It increases our feeling of connection to the Buddha. And especially, if we can develop some strong concentration on the figure of the Buddha, then it's more likely when we die that image comes to mind. And, at the time we die, boy, that's what we want to come to mind. You don't, at the time you die, want to be thinking about, what happened with your brother or sister or ex-husband or ex-wife, or kids or, your wealth or anything like that. You want to be able to completely be thinking about the Buddha at that time. So, using the Buddha as your object of meditation has those kind of benefits and advantages. So the way to do this is in the space in front of you. Some of them say maybe a finger's, a hand span or a body's length in front of you. You visualize the Buddha. I think at the beginning, visualize whatever size you want. As your mind becomes more focused, then the image of the Buddha, you can decrease it and make it smaller. If you make it too small at the beginning, that can make your mind a little bit tight. But, if you make it like the size of your thumb, something like that, or maybe a little bit bigger. In other words, not a monstrous Buddha, huge Buddha, but, something. If a thumb is too big, then, maybe this big, something like that. And try and think of the Buddha as a human being. You're not visualizing a statue. Yeah. So you may look at a statue or look at a painting to, get the feeling of how the Buddha looks and, his physical position and things like that. But when you visualize, you want to think of it as a living being, not as a statue. Okay? And make the image made of light. Yeah. So if you visualize something that's made of light, that's going to keep you awake a lot more. It'll keep you awake, and it's also more attractive. So, when you have an attractive image like that, then of course the mind is drawn to it. So to generate the image, first look at one of the statues or the paintings or something of the Buddha, and then close your eyes and imagine it. So you don't develop concentration by staring at an external physical object. You do it by imagining that object in your mind, in your mind's eye, okay? And so start out, getting just the general shape of the Buddha, and then go over all the details. Okay? So when I say get the general shape, don't draw an outline. So it's not like you're drawing the Buddha and okay, have an outline, then like the puzzle pieces, I'll put a face in and I'll put a hand in. Not like that, okay? It's like when somebody walks in the room, the whole person comes there. Yeah? It's not like their head comes and then a foot comes and something like that. When you see a person in the room, the whole person's there. You may focus on one part of the person more than another part. Yeah, when you're talking to somebody, you may be looking at their eyes and, or looking at their facial expression or something like that. When you're not talking to them, you may be checking out their shoes. Who knows? Okay? But, even if you're focusing on one part of the person, you still have the feeling that the whole person's there. Okay, so you generate, the whole image of the Buddha, the rough image of the Buddha, and then start going over the details. Okay, this is what his face looks like, his eyes and his nose and his mouth, and this is what his ears, and then his chest and his arms and the hand position and the leg position and so on and so forth. Okay, so you go over the object, the details of the Buddha's figure, and then when you have you've gone over that, then you focus just on whatever image you have in your mind. Yeah, and if it it doesn't matter if it's real clear or not, you still focus on it. If it really dissolves and gets very blurry, then go over all the details again and make it more vivid. Okay? At the beginning, it may not be very clear. Yeah? And that's simply, now some people say, but I can't visualize. Let's start there. I can't visualize. Okay, if I say, think of pizza. Do you have an image of pizza in your mind? Even your eyes are open. Even your eyes are open. Do you have an image of pizza in your mind? Yeah, you do, don't you? If I say, think of a close friend, do you have an image in your mind? Yeah, even your eyes are open. You have an image of that person's face, don't you? And of what they look like. That's visualization. So when we say visualize, we're not talking about seeing in technicolor, like you see with your eyes. We're talking about just this, what we do all the time when we think of things. There's a mental image that appears to our mind. If I say, think of a rose, do you have an image of a rose in your mind? Yeah. If I say, think of a pet that you've had. Do you have an image of that pet? If I say, think of your room where you live, do you have an image? Yeah, so all that's visualization. Even your eyes are open. So here, we're lowering our eyes, like I talked about last night, the physical position, and just in your mind's eye, you're generating that image. So don't expect it to be like seeing with your eyes. You're seeing with your mind's eye. Yeah, you go over the details, you focus on it. Yeah. Okay. So you can choose, between the breath and the image of the Buddha. However, don't go back and forth between them. Because if you do that, then you'll never develop good concentration on either of them. Yeah. If at the beginning of your meditation session, if you're using the image of the Buddha, you might want to breathe for, a couple of minutes to calm your mind. But then your main meditation is using the figure of the Buddha. Okay? Are there any questions so far on this? Yeah.
When you are visualizing the Buddha, if it's kind of smaller, is it like floating right in front of you, or is it like on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, you can have the Buddha just there, or you can have the whole background, mountains and trees and, whatever you want. Okay? But you want to focus on the Buddha himself. Huh?
He's kind of like in the air more than like sitting in front of, like on the ground in front of you?
No, not like sitting in the ground in front of you. He's in the space in front of you. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So if you do your meditation and focusing on breathing versus the visualization, do you do it all the time?
Yeah.
Or you can alternate, maybe the following day you do the Buddha visualization?
No.
You have to be.
Yeah, because if you change objects, then it's harder to develop concentration. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can I choose only practice Buddha meditation, not breathing meditation?
Yeah. You can do just the Buddha if you want to.
All the time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
How do we develop the concentration? Like, I would be concerned that I would get distracted having details.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you're doing the Buddha, let's say you and you're going over some detail, like what the Buddha's eyes look like, and it's like you're just they're really attractive and they're beautiful, then just stay looking at the Buddha's eyes, focusing on that part of the Buddha. That's fine. You still have the whole rest of the body. Like I said, when I'm looking at you, I'm focusing on your eyes, but I realize that you have legs and the rest of you's here too. Okay?
Someone's having established, like, we've gone over the details in our mind's eye, and then we just focus on the whole Buddha.
Yeah, on the whole Buddha, but if there's one part that your mind naturally gravitates to, you can stay with that too. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I have a question about the size of the Buddha that you're
Mm-hmm.
describing. 'Cause, I've heard before to not make it too big.
Mm-hmm.
I just have a question about why is that? Because sometimes it's easier for you to make it really big and
Yeah.
shrink it.
Well, if it's easier to start big and then shrink it, that's okay. But you want to focus on something that's smaller. If it's too big, then it's easier for your mind to, get distracted. Okay? Okay. I didn't go over the physical position because we did that last night. But just to review, your legs, either in Vajra or half Vajra, or like Tara, your left leg tucked in and your right leg outside of that, or just sitting regular cross-legged like you do, or on the bench or in a chair with your feet flat on the floor. Okay? And then hands right on the left, thumbs touching. Don't let your thumbs slouch. Okay, so it forms a triangle, and then that's against your body. So it's a little bit below your navel, yeah. And then head level, not like this, not like this, not like that. Okay, eyes lowered, but not really looking at anything. Yeah, and your mouth closed and breathing normally. Okay. So shall we try that now for a few minutes? They also recommend doing short meditation sessions at the beginning. Yeah, like you do 5 minutes of focusing on the object, and then you open your eyes and look around for, a minute or two, then you come and focus on the object again. So we'll just do like 1 5-minute session so you can get some idea of this. Okay. So in the future meditation sessions, you'll, meditate for a short period, the bell, open your eyes a minute, come back, do another short period, something like that. We only did 5 or 6 minutes then, you may want to go up to 10 or something, see what works for you to start with. But they recommend short sessions at the beginning because that way, it's not too strenuous for your mind. Because if you force your mind to meditate too long, then, you get in a bad mood and your mind gets tight and then you don't want to come back to your cushion again. So better to keep it short and sweet so that you, enjoy it. Then in the afternoon, we'll be doing alternate sessions of 15 minutes of sitting meditation like this, and then 15 minutes of walking meditation. And in the break time too, if you want to go outdoors, it's nice to do some walking meditation. So there's many different ways to do walking meditation. I'll just describe some of them and then you can choose among them. One way that is often done in the Theravada tradition is walking very slowly and being very aware of the steps, So here you would start out walking a little bit slower than normal and just being aware of left, right. You do that for a while, then you slow down a little bit and become aware, with each step of lifting your foot, pushing it forward, placing it down, lifting, pushing, placing. Okay? And then you do that for a while, focusing on those 3 phases of each step. And then you slow it down even more and become aware of all the things, the sensations, just even as you're lifting, how your heel comes and then the ball of your foot and your toes. And, how it feels when you're pushing your foot forward. And then as you're placing your foot down, all the different stages. So you slow it down like that to become very minutely aware of all the specific phases. And so you're walking quite slowly. So that's one way to do it. Okay. In the Chinese Zen tradition, they walk very, very quickly during their walking meditation. So they have a Buddha in the middle, and they really walk very, very quickly. The idea being to invigorate the body and get yourself moving so that when you sit down, your body is more flexible and more cooperative. My teacher has a kind of walking meditation that I find quite interesting, which is just walk at any pace you want to, but ask yourself while you're walking, why do I say I'm walking? On what basis do I say I'm walking? And so you just explore that, or another way to put it is, who's walking? It's another way to do it. Who's walking? Or what is walking? What is the action of walking? Who's the agent that's walking? What's the relationship between the agent and the action? Okay, so walk, doing that, keeping that in mind. Yet another way to do walking meditation is again at normal speed, but to put the Buddha in your heart, the image of the Buddha in your heart or on top of your head, and the Buddha's radiating light, like he is also when you're doing the sitting meditation. He's made of light and radiating light. And as you walk along, you imagine like this Buddha at your heart or on the crown of your head, radiating light to all the beings and to the environment, purifying the sentient beings' negative karma, purifying the environment, making people's minds peaceful and tranquil and content. Yeah, in other words, generating love and compassion and extending that to them when you're walking by imagining light coming from the Buddha at your heart. So that's another way to do walking meditation. Yeah. Or you could do it slower if you want to just focus on the visualization. The speed in this one isn't important. Yeah. Similarly, when you're saying, who's walking, or on what basis do I say I'm walking? That one, whatever speed you want to do is okay. Okay. When you're walking, you hold your hands, the right and the left, your thumbs are touching at your navel. They're not hanging down like this when you're doing walking meditation. Even when we're doing the chanting, they're not down here. They're up here, at your waist. Okay? When you're meditating, they're a little bit lower in your lap, but when you're doing walking meditation, more at the level of your waist. Okay.
Buddha meditation,
Mm-hmm.
I'm having difficulty getting from the statue to a human thing.
Yes. Yeah, most people have that difference, that difficulty. You might try, thinking of the Buddha when he was alive and walking around. Yeah. Or, just think of a monastic in general, and then, have the Buddha's face on it, walking around. But then make the body into one of golden light. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I get a headache when I'm visualizing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm trying to.
Yes, yeah, you're straining and, yeah, you're trying to see it with your eyes. Just relax that. You're not trying to see with your eyes. It's just like I said, pizza image. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just have another question about, you were talking about the distractions and things.
Mm-hmm.
So what about, like, if you start and immediately just all kinds of things, and it's so, and then every once in a while, the Buddha kind of jumps in there, but then other stuff just keeps happening.
Oh, yeah.
So distracted in the beginning.
Yeah.
Do you take a break and then come back, or just keep trying?
If you're doing it with the Buddha, you might try for a minute to focus on your breath to calm the mind and get rid of the distractions, and then go back to the image of the Buddha. Or if there's one dominant distraction as we go through here, you might have to switch and meditate on that to get rid of it. But if it's just the mind's usual agitation and it's all over the place, then just watch the breath and then keep bringing it back to the image of the Buddha. Don't get distressed because you're distracted. Yeah? You hear that? This is what happens. We get very distressed. I can't concentrate. Everybody else is, my mind is so like a crazy person. Join the club. Yeah. Our minds are always like that. We're just noticing it now. So don't get alarmed.
My mind goes to my to-do list all the time.
Oh, yes.
So keeping a piece of paper, or does that end up being another distraction?
Well, they say don't keep a piece of paper, but I cheat sometimes. Because if you keep a piece of paper, then it gives you impetus to keep on thinking of things to do. Whereas if you discipline yourself, no piece of paper, then you just have to say, okay, just drop it totally. It will come, if it's important enough, it will come in my mind after the session. Yeah. And if it doesn't come in my mind after the session, it really wasn't that important. Okay. So, I'd like to start the text now. What I've decided to do, there's a text in the Chinese tradition. Yeah, it's Nagarjuna's commentary on the 25,000 line Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. And a friend of mine who is a fantastic translator from classical Chinese into English translated the 14th chapter. This is the 14th chapter. Yeah. Well, I should say it has Chinese on one side, English on the other side. So maybe half of it is the 14th chapter. I'm not sure how many chapters there are altogether. Okay. But it's a huge text. It's one of Nagarjuna's major texts. Interestingly enough, it's not found in the Tibetan canon, but it is one of the major texts in the Chinese canon. So, but the content is the same as what you find in. Yeah, I was reading in this chapter. It's it really follows the presentation in the Pali sutras very much, because the Chinese, well, this text was written in India, so I shouldn't even say Pali sutras because the sutras were in Sanskrit there. But the early sutras, it follows the instructions there quite well. But it puts them in the context of a bodhisattva doing the meditation, on the to perfect meditative concentration. Yeah, so it starts out not just with the meditation, but with why a bodhisattva would do this meditation. Okay, so it's quite interesting. So I thought I would read it and comment as we go along. And it gets into the 5 hindrances. Before that, it gets into the topic of, attachment to the objects of the 5 senses, which, overlaps with the 5 hindrances. So we'll get as far as we can. Yeah. Okay, so the actual text in the sutra says, it is through being neither mentally distracted nor indulging in the enjoyment that one should perfect dhyana paramita. Dhyana, it means, is the same word, it means meditative stability. Yeah, in Pali it's jhana, so it refers to stages of concentration. And in Chinese, the Sanskrit dhyana becomes chan, and in Japanese it becomes zen. So that's how you get the name of Zen as a tradition. Okay, so by not being mentally distracted, by excitement, ill will, drowsiness, or whatever, nor indulging in the enjoyment of concentration. Okay, because they say that when you've actualized these different levels of meditative stability, that the mind is so joyful, so blissful, that it's easy to become quite attached to it and just stay there in that single-pointedness without coming back to the analytic meditations and the Lam Rim meditations in order to develop wisdom and understanding and renunciation and bodhicitta and so forth. Yeah, so they all warn us about getting too attached to the bliss of samadhi. But the idea being that developing samadhi or serenity, shamatha, is it's not an exclusively Buddhist practice, just the techniques used to develop this deep concentration, is not exclusively Buddhist. It's found in other meditative traditions as well. What's unusual when you do it in the Buddhist sense is you do it with a mind that has refuge in the three jewels, and you do it with the motivation of renunciation of samsara, or the aspiration to attain full awakening for the benefit of beings. Yeah. If you lose that Buddhist motivation, then, and you're just doing it to attain, concentration for the sake of concentration, then it's easy to get attached to the enjoyment of those states. And then you forget to develop renunciation of cyclic existence. You forget to develop wisdom and compassion. And what you wind up, because of that, is taking a good rebirth in your next life as one of the gods, who has meditative stability. But then after that rebirth, the karma for that rebirth is over, then you go kerplunk down to the desire realm where we're living right now. Yeah, so it doesn't, the point is concentration alone does not lead us, does not take us out of cyclic existence. That's the point. So in our practice, we shouldn't just focus on developing concentration. Generating all the other, aspects of the path is very, very important, not just concentration. Also, to understand that to really, if you're really going to develop shamatha, serenity, you need very special conditions to do that in. Yeah, you need to live in a very isolated, peaceful place, meditate all day long, so you're not working, you're not seeing your friends, you're not checking your Facebook page, you're not Twittering, you're not reading the news, you're not watching the latest films. Yeah, you're totally focused on your practice. So that, you need some particular kinds of situation to generate the full concentration like that. So, while we're trying to generate concentration in our lives right now, don't expect that you're going to generate full serenity, living a busy life. You'll improve your concentration, that's for sure. Yeah. But don't have this idea that you're going to go, wow, and then, 6 hours later kind of wake up from your meditation concentration, Okay? Because you really need special conditions in order to really fully focus the mind like that. Okay. So the explanatory text that Nagarjuna has from that one sutra verse, here, somebody puts a question, at the very beginning. So the question is, the Dharma of the Bodhisattva takes the spiritual liberation of all beings as the work to be done. Why then does he sit at leisure in forests or marshes, or abide still and silent in the mountains, solely benefiting himself, casting aside and forsaking beings? Okay, so here's Joe Blow again. Yeah, Joe Blow is always the devil's advocate, raising some kind of question or doubt. Basically what he's saying, well, look, the practice of a bodhisattva is to attain full awakening for the benefit of sentient beings. So how come then here's this bodhisattva who, just sits around leisurely in the meadows and the marshes, or they go up to the mountains and they're just silent and still, not doing anything to benefit sentient beings. So what's the story? Okay, that's what Joe Blow's asking. Okay, so Nagarjuna responds. And this is interesting. Notice the first thing they're talking about is, why is the Bodhisattva doing this practice? Yeah. So the response is, although the bodhisattva may be physically apart from beings, still his mind never forsakes them. Residing in a quiet location, he strives to develop the meditative absorptions and thus obtain actual wisdom. This is done in order to eventually deliver everyone to liberation. Okay, so the idea is, no, the bodhisattva isn't just hanging around, twiddling their fingers, lying in the sun, and they're not abandoning the sentient beings, even though physically they're apart. In their mind, their whole motivation is to develop serenity so that they can use that concentrated state to understand the nature of reality, and then use their direct perception of emptiness, the empty nature of reality, to free their own minds of all obscurations, and then use that freedom in their own mind to be able to make many manifestations that go out and aid all the different sentient beings, teaching them the Dharma, encouraging them to practice, or benefiting them in whatever way they possibly can. Okay? So it's kind of like, if you want to be a doctor, you may have that strong motivation to be a doctor, but you go to medical school first. So while you're in medical school, maybe somebody says, "Oh, what's this guy doing? They're just going, to class all day. They say they want to cure people, but, they're not directly relating to people. They just have their nose in some text all day. Yeah, how come?" So it's kind of like somebody asking that question. Well, do you want somebody performing surgery who hasn't studied before? Who hasn't practiced before? No, thank you. So, similarly, how can the bodhisattva benefit all beings if they haven't conquered the obstacles in their own mind and freed their own mind first? Okay, so that's the purpose of it. And it's interesting, because bodhisattvas, even they may be in a very quiet and secluded environment, their minds are completely involved with sentient beings, not in the way our minds are involved with sentient beings. Yeah, our minds are involved with sentient beings. Oh, here I am in the mountains. Oh, I miss my friends. I miss my family. Maybe I should leave this mountain retreat and go down and be with them. I'm sure they're missing me so much too. Oh, but if I leave my meditation and go down to be with them, then everybody will think I'm really a bad meditator, and they'll be right. So I don't want to lose my reputation as a good Buddhist. I still have to look like a good meditator. So I guess I better stay up here at least for a little while longer before I run down to be with my friends. And then you start meditating, and then, oh, Donald Trump is running for president. I wonder if he won. Oh my God, what would this country be like with Donald Trump as president? And then you go off, imagining Donald Trump as president. Yeah, can you imagine Donald Trump at the UN? What's he gonna say? Yeah. Huh? Yeah, there will be more media coverage, definitely. Okay. Or your mind says, no, maybe not Donald Trump. Maybe Hillary Clinton. What's it like as Hillary Clinton as president? Is she going to be putting on her makeup in the break time, And your mind goes, what's Bill going to be like as the first husband? Oh, God. Why did she stay married to that guy anyway? And then your mind's, wandering off on something. That's how our mind is related to sentient beings, even when our body is in a secluded place. That's not how the bodhisattva's mind is related to sentient beings. Okay. Bodhisattva's mind is related to sentient beings when they sit down to meditate. They're thinking of, here are all these sentient beings who are, stuck in cyclic existence. Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and all of us too, wanting to be happy, not wanting to suffer, running around like idiots, creating so much negative karma, every single one of us, And the Bodhisattva's looking out at that with, incredible compassion and saying, may all these beings be free, and can I lead them to the state of non-abiding nirvana? But then going, if I don't have that state myself, and if I don't have any concentration myself, then how am I going to be able to lead them? And so by the power of that strong compassion and strong altruistic intention, then the Bodhisattva does the meditation on meditative stability. Okay? So that's how the Bodhisattva is relating to sentient beings mentally, even though their body may not be together with them. Okay? So the difference between bodhisattvas and us. Yeah. Okay? We can become bodhisattvas, though. Okay, so Nagarjuna continues. This is analogous to when one takes medicine to tend to the body and as an expedient sets aside household responsibilities. When one's energy and strength return to their normally healthful state, then one takes up one's work again, just as before. Okay. The Bodhisattva's indulgence in stillness is just like this. He employs the power of dhyana absorption to ingest the medicine of wisdom and then gains the power of the super knowledges. Okay? So, if you're sick, you stop doing your household responsibilities to take the medicine and get well, and then you resume your responsibilities. Here with us, or with bodhisattvas, they take the time out from, benefiting sentient beings to heal their own mind through developing wisdom and developing the super knowledges. And then with those, then they re-enter society, which they've never really been separated from, and continue to benefit sentient beings. So these super knowledges that the bodhisattva gains through deep states of concentration, the first one is called supernormal powers. So this is bodhisattvas can do, or people with strong concentration, can do things. They can walk through walls, they can go under the earth, they can walk on water, they can make their body invisible and then make it appear again. They can make their body very small or make it very big. They can fly in the sky without an airplane. So physical supernormal powers through the power of concentration. And then the second one is what they call the divine eye, which is clairvoyance, where you can see things that are far away, that, not in the immediate area of your physical eye. And then clairaudience, where you can hear things in other places, So the clairvoyance allows them to see different sentient beings and know who they can benefit and where they are, so where to manifest. The clairaudience enables them to go to many pure lands or many places on the earth where teachings are being given and hear teachings. The fourth one is the ability to know your previous lives. And so knowing that, you generate very strong renunciation. The fifth one is is being able to watch sentient beings pass away from one life and be reborn in the next life. So that gives you a very strong understanding of karma and very strong compassion for sentient beings. And then the sixth one is knowledge that the defilements have been eliminated in your own mind. Okay, so through concentration, then bodhisattvas gain these six. And you can see how having these six are going to, will really increase your ability to benefit sentient beings. Yeah. Okay. He then returns among beings, becoming perhaps a father, mother, wife, or son, perhaps a master, student, or lineage elder, perhaps a god, perhaps a human, or on down even to becoming an animal. He employs all manner of speech and skillful means to instruct and lead. So having developed, firm concentration, serenity, combining that with the wisdom of emptiness through insight, then the bodhisattva is able to, manifest in all these different roles and places to benefit sentient beings. Okay. So, questions? Comment? Anything? Yeah.
I'm wondering if anyone who develops this, if they weren't in the Buddhist world view, that they could develop these super knowledges, why they wouldn't.
Why they wouldn't?
Why they wouldn't believe in karma.
Oh, okay. You can still believe in karma, and develop them, but not have renunciation. Yeah, many non-Buddhists, in India, believe in karma, but they, if you get attached to the samadhi or whatever, you don't necessarily develop renunciation of samsara. Okay. Yes, yeah?
Yeah, I was thinking about all the super knowledges.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those, especially getting towards being able to see past lives and things,
Mm-hmm.
they seem like they're getting towards being close to being a Buddha. So what level of bodhisattva?
Yeah. Well, actually, only the last of the six of the super knowledges is somebody who is liberated from samsara. The other ones, even people who aren't bodhisattvas can gain simply through the power of concentration. So even non-Buddhists, can gain these different psychic powers. But of course, their motivation, once they have them, is going to be different. And so sometimes, this is why they say it's so important to really emphasize your motivation in your practice, to make sure that you develop these powers out of compassion for sentient beings. Otherwise, these powers can become a source of arrogance. Yeah. And you can start saying, oh, I know who you were in your past life, and you become a psychic. Yeah. Not one of the phony ones, but, a psychic who really can see people's past lives. But, you use it as a money-making enterprise. Yeah. So that's totally the wrong motivation. If they still have, strong samadhi, they still have the power. If their motivation really degenerates so that they haven't overcome the hindrances, then they can lose it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Sure, I understood you right. So the first 5 of those developed from concentration alone, but the 6th one is only
Is concentration and wisdom. Yeah.
wisdom of the arhat.
Yeah, it has to be any wisdom that understands reality, that because it's realization that the defilements have been eliminated. So you need to either be an arhat or a Buddha. Yeah. Okay. So we'll continue later today. In the meantime, you have some practice sessions ahead, so really use them and remember what we just ran through, and focus on your motivation and So you also understand why you're trying to develop concentration.